Hello everyone, how are we? Thanks very much for coming. It's great to have you here. Welcome to Born in a Wheelchair. Just going to start off with a little bit of housekeeping, as I always do. First of all, when people come to see the show, they typically look at me, and then they look at the flyer, then they look at me, look at the flyer, and I'll ask him. But you're not born in a wheelchair. I say, I know. Nobody is. A strange birth, that. Another thing is, when comedians come up and start their show, typically they always start off with a little look-alike joke. I've always been very jealous. You know, it's a free-hitting comedy. They normally come up on stage and they'll say something like, "I know what you're thinking. I look like a cross between Jabba the Hutt and Jules Holland." And I've always been very jealous because I've never had a celebrity look-alike, not since Darius died. Don't know what that reaction's for. I didn't kill him. But I've never had a celebrity look-alike, and I've been getting one recently. I've been told recently that I look like the British TV personality Rylan. and I tried to take this as a compliment. I said, "Oh, thanks very much." And the person that told me I looked like Rylan went, "Nah." Some of that laughter was a bit too enthusiastic there. He said, "No, you look like Rylan before he gets his teeth done." There you go. So the show's called Born in a Wheelchair. It's about my life with my older brother Alexander. So let me start off by telling you a little bit about my family. Growing up, there was my mum and my dad. I'm not trying to show off or anything. There was my younger sister Lauren and my older brother Alexander. Now Alexander's got quadriplegic cerebral palsy. He's profoundly disabled, Alexander. But in many ways, he's the love of my life. He's my absolute best friend in the world. I'm not his best friend, apparently. But and Alexander, as I said to you, he's profoundly disabled, quadriplegic cerebral palsy. He can't walk and he can't talk. And we would still tell him to shut up. And I love that joke. I love that joke for so many reasons, because there's somebody out there that will be sitting there in your seat, feeling uncomfortable, sitting there going, "I'm not sure if I can laugh at that. Please just tell a pedo joke." Because you see, I'm going to try and challenge some attitudes here today, because my brother, he's a normal person. He just has an abnormal condition. Right, my brother, he can't talk, but he can communicate. He communicates with his eyes. So he looks up for yes, and he looks down for no. And when he puts his head forward like that, he's asking you for a square go. And you see, my brother, like he can understand everything. Although my dad, an old shipyard worker, is keen to point out. He said, "Listen, James, don't mind you telling your wee stories." Full run at the Edinburgh Fringe. "Don't mind you telling your wee stories, but you need to be careful, because we might get his money stopped." And some of you will be thinking that's a joke, but that's the truth, because that's what they do. They go after the most vulnerable in society, don't they? The DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions. Can you imagine what they would do with that revelation? You know, be sitting there going, "Right, okay, so your brother, quadriplegic cerebral palsy, can't walk, can't talk, but he understands everything. Oh. We could maybe get him to drive a bus." How Alexander communicates is amazing. It's genuinely unbelievable. Nobody taught him how to communicate, nobody taught us how to understand. It just happened. But what he does, when he wants to tell you something, he sticks his eyes on you, and you cannot escape his gaze. Growing up, it was like living with the Mona Lisa. Because whenever he moved in the room, his eyes were on you. He's also a priceless work of art. But he puts his eyes on you, he's relentless, and then when he wants to tell you something, he gives you a series of cues and clues. You've got to then sort of figure them out, repeat them back to him, and he'll tell you if you're right or not. So never, ever, ever take on my family at charades. World class, so we are. But what he'll do is, he'll start off, he'll put his eyes on you, then the next stage is he'll look down at his heart. Okay, that's to signify emotion. Is he angry? Is he happy? Is he sad? Then he'll look down at his wrist, because that's where your watch is. That's to signify time. Is it something that's happened in the past, the present, or the future? And then he'll look down at his hands, because that's where your fingers are. And that's to tell you to fuck off. Now you might have an idea why we have to tell him to shut up sometimes. But see, the thing is, Alexander, I don't know a lot about cerebral palsy. I know a lot about Alexander. Alexander, he sits in a moulded wheelchair. His head hangs away down to the side. His arms and legs will sort of flail about. They're called spastications. I don't like that word because it's been hijacked to mean something terrible. And by the way, I've used that sort of language in the past. Shamefully, I look back and I think, what an arsehole. So I'm not here to go on anyone. All I'm here to say is, if you've used that language in the past, just try not to use it again in the future. And if you trip up and you make a wee mistake, just keep trying. I promise you, the world will be a better place. But if you're not familiar with disability, it can be uncomfortable. You can see Alexander in a wheelchair, his head's hanging down, his arms and legs are flailing about. If you've got cerebral palsy like my brother has, he has trouble swallowing, so you can end up with a lot of saliva around your mouth, a bit of dribble. And what we do when we dress him, for example, is we put these bandanas on, these neckerchiefs we tie him around his neck, make it part of his outfit. It gives him a bit of dignity, we can wipe his mouth. But if you aren't aware of that, like my mates when we were growing up, they'd be like, why is your brother dressed like a cowboy? You know, and that's the thing. Like Alexander, you know, he needs 24-hour care. He sits in a moulded wheelchair, and as I've said to you, disability, it's uncomfortable. You know, and the only reason I know that is that my girlfriend Marion, she said to me, you know, after she'd met my brother a bit down the line, she went, I love your brother to bits, but I've got to be honest with you, I found it a wee bit overwhelming because I'd never met anyone as disabled as your brother. I didn't really know what to do. And I thought that was a very honest and very brave thing to say, because most people kid on that it's not uncomfortable. Most people will say things like, oh, I don't actually see the disability, I just see the person. And I think, do you? Do you, Karen? And see, what happens is, when we're out with Alexander, pushing him in the wheelchair, I would say half the people we come across, they'll just look away. They're not trying to be rude, they don't mean it. I believe in the fundamental goodness of human beings, but they don't really know what to do. They don't want to be rude, don't want to stare, so they look away. And I would say the other half of the people that we come across, they'll try and do the right thing, they'll make an effort, and God bless them, they'll always make an ass of it. Because what they'll do is they'll never talk to Alexander, they'll always talk to the person who's pushing the wheelchair, and they'll always do this. Tilt their head to the side. They'll go, how is he alright? Bless. Is he just out for a wee bit of fresh air, is he? Is he off to the park to see the ducks? He's not a dog. And the thing is, right, Alexander, he's not got much of a patience for these sort of things. He's been in this situation 100 times before. So all he's doing, right, is he's just looking at the person, looking down at his hands, looking at the person, looking down at his hands. And like they're like, is he trying to say something? God bless him. God bless him. What's he trying to say? Right, and we've got to keep up this charade. We've actually got to keep the lies going because we can't tell the truth. We can't actually say, no, he's telling you to fuck off. Instead, we're making up excuses. We're like, oh no, he's just saying that he's nice to meet you. He's looking at his hands and then he's looking at you. He's saying it's a handshake. And Alexander's going, no, he's not. My earliest memory of Alexander, I must have been about, I think I was about 4 years old, and my mum and dad sat me down and they said, listen, never ever ever interrupt your brother, never get into his room, never interrupt his sleep. Your brother has to sleep in total silence and total darkness. And I thought, wow, my brother is Batman. And my mum and dad, great people, they've dedicated their life to Alexander's care. You know, they had him involved in everything, gave him a great childhood. He was at sports clubs, social clubs, went to scouting for the disabled. They took him to Lourdes a couple of times. They had him playing in the street in his wheelchair. My mum would bribe children to come into the house, not with cash or anything like that. Just with like sweets to play with Alexander. And my mum and dad, they're not overly religious people, but they did say, like, we always held out hope. We always prayed for a miracle, that, you know, one day we would find Alexander wasn't there because he just got up and he'd been able to walk. And I understand that sort of hope that you would hold out for your son or your daughter. And I remember around about that time there was a bit of commotion in the Gardner household because my mum and dad went into Alexander's room one morning and lo and behold, Alexander wasn't there. And my mum thought, wow, it is a miracle. That was her first thought. You know that way when you're watching the lottery numbers come out and you've got the very first number? And you think, I've won it, I'm winning it, I'm winning it, and I'm leaving you. And they were like, get a bit panicked, where is he? So they turned out the bedroom, down the long hallway, turned right into the living room, and there was Alexander lying on the living room floor on his own, right? They got closer to Alexander, he's laughing, he's smiling. My mum looks at Alexander, notices on his wrist, there's a wee bit of blood coming from his wrist. My mum's first thought is, stigmata. Embodiment of the mark of Christ. It is a miracle. You've got to go to Lourdes twice, that's what you're doing. It's the second trip that makes all the difference. It's a double, you've got to do a double dunter on these things. And what had actually happened was that Alexander had managed to communicate to me through a locked bedroom door and walls and all that, that I was to get into his room. He must have put the bat signal out for me. And I went into the room and Alexander told me to get him out of bed. Now, I couldn't get him out of bed. I was only 4 years old. I was that high. I couldn't even get up to the bed, you know. But what I could do was I was able to get all the cushions and all the pillows off the bed, and I made like a wee soft landing for Alexander. And I pulled him off the bed, and he landed nice and safe. And then what I did was I got the duvet off the bed and created like a makeshift stretcher for Alexander, and I pulled him on top of the duvet, and I got both ends of the duvet, and I pulled Alexander out the bedroom, down the long hallway, and turned right into the living room. But you see, what happened was Alexander never kept his arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times. And I accidentally, inadvertently, had given Alexander a wee carpet burn. Imagine laughing at that, you sick bastard. There's always one that laughs at that. And what happened, the reason that I wasn't in the room at the time of discovery was that Alexander had actually told me to get into the kitchen and put the kettle on. So I was 4 years old, making cups of tea. And I was just glad that Alexander never told me to go down to the shop, so I might have taken the car. But round about that time, something else happened. About 6 months after that, my mum and dad went into the room, and Alexander wasn't there again. And my dad was like, I'm sure I took the bulb out of that bat signal. You see, Alexander's got quite an unusual shape. When people think of wheelchair users, typically they might think of somebody, you know, their feet and their legs tuck away nicely and they can wheel about, they can fucking shoot hoops, because that's what we see on television. There's a pretty poor representation of disabled people on TV. And Alexander's got quite an unusual shape. He's got scoliosis of the spine, he's got a dislocated hip, he's got one big, proud, straight leg like a musket, right? His other leg, it's got a bit more bend in it, and when you take these spasms or spastications, if you're lying on a flat surface like lying in bed, Alexander could actually push himself out of bed inadvertently. And when my mum and dad went in one morning, he'd actually pushed himself out the back of the bed, fallen down and lay there all night, which is pretty sad. So my mum and dad were like, look, James is going to have to share a room with Alexander as a sort of insurance policy. You know, that and the fact my sister was born and we really needed the space. So what actually, in an ideal world, we would have had a double bed for Alexander, a double bed, so that if his legs sprung out, then he wouldn't fall out the bed. But we didn't have space for that. So we had these beds, right? They were like the Russian dolls of beds. So Alexander had this sort of single bed tucked away in the corner of the room. And then underneath that was a slightly smaller version of my bed that you pulled out on caster wheels. And then you lifted the bed up and the legs sprung out, much like Alexander's. And then I'd jump into bed and my mum or dad would push my bed up against Alexander's to create a double bed. So if his legs stuck out, he wouldn't fall out the bed. So most brothers have bunk beds. We had clunk beds. And that was how I lived my life. I actually shared a room with Alexander for the best part of 25 years. And I would often get up through the night with Alexander because often he would take spasms or spastications, he would take unwell. And I would never tell my parents. I would always try and give them a bit of respite, because looking after Alexander is really difficult. It's 24-hour care, it's hard emotionally, it's hard physically. So I would put Alexander in his wheelchair and I'd sit up with him through the night. And that was how I lived my life. I would very often go to school, go to university, I'd go to work, having not slept. And I don't mind that, because that's just my life and that's my brother. But to me, it was normal. And talking to Alexander is a very visual thing. As I've explained to you, he moves his eyes up for yes. So to talk to me, I have to see him. So when we were lying in bed at night, if I'd be lying next to him, if I had to ask if he was okay, was he too hot, was he too cold, did he need something, rather than flicking the light switch on and off, I developed this little technique. And I told my mum and dad about this technique a few years ago, and it blew their mind because they never knew about it. So what I would do is, if I had to ask if Alexander was okay, I'd be lying next to him in bed at night, and I would very lovingly, very gently, I would reach over with my left hand, and I would gently, ever so softly, place the palm of my hand just on his forehead. And then even more softly and even more gently, I would take my left thumb and I would just lower it onto Alexander's eyelid, just so it was weightless, right? And I would say, Alexander, are you okay? And if he said yes, he would move his eye up in a little half moment, just a wee half blink. And what would happen is eyelashes would tickle the tip of my thumb, and I would know that he was okay. That's quite sweet, isn't it? And for me, that was normal. And I'll never forget the first night I stayed over with my girlfriend, Marion. I reached over to Marion and said, Marion, shall we have sex? And it is the last place she ever expected my thumb to go. But for me, that was life. Life was normal. Like, I didn't even know that Alexander was disabled. It wasn't until I was about 6 or 7 years old, I remember looking at Alexander sitting there in his wheelchair. I remember sitting thinking, his pram is an absolute cracker, Mum. When did I get one of them? But my mum, she's a real stalwart, a real hero of this story, because she made sure that Alexander was always involved. There was total inclusivity. There was no stigma around Alexander's disability, which was brilliant. It was an amazing way to be. Like when my friends would come to the door and ask if I was going out to play football, my mum always insisted that I took Alexander, which was great because I loved having him about. I was also just grateful that my friends weren't coming to the door asking if I was going out to play on the BMX bikes. Because to this day, I still don't know how to give Alexander a backie. You know? And I was too young to actually operate Alexander's wheelchair properly at that stage. Like my mum would actually have to take Alexander's wheelchair, tilt it back and bump it down the front steps of our house. And then I'd go with my friends in tow and Alexander in the wheelchair, and we'd head to St Blaine's Primary School, which was the local primary school where we lived. And my mates would all jump the fence to go and play football on the red ash pitch. And I don't think even now, looking back, anyone realised how difficult that was for me. You know, what a tough situation to be in, because it's really traumatic trying to chuck a wheelchair over a fence. Alexander said he loved it, but no, of course we had to go the long way round. We'd go right down to the bottom, in through the front gates, in through the car park. No 8-year-old should be navigating speed bumps in his brother's wheelchair. Once you get Alexander's up to the side of the pitch, that's when the next sort of stage would sort of kick off. You'd have to get Alexander's wheelchair close enough that he could see everything and feel part of it, but far away enough that he wouldn't get hit by the ball. And then during the game, I'd have to run back and forward every 2 minutes to make sure that Alexander was okay. Was he too hot? Was he too cold? Was that offside? Because with Alexander's eyesight, he was called Hawkeye long before VAR. Like I say, Alexander, he's an unbelievable individual. I love sort of communicating with him, but it must be frustrating for him as well, you know, because, you know, he knows what he's wanting to tell you, but sometimes, you know, there's miscommunication, we can't figure it out. Like, I remember Alexander was trying to tell me something once, and it was going on for ages, and you've got to try and narrow the options down to figure out what you're trying to say. You've got to get in a yes-no situation. So I was like, right, Al, what are you trying to tell me? Is it about a person or a place? Is it a place? No. Is it a person? Eyes up. Okay, it's a person. Is it male or female? Female? No. Male? Eyes up. Male. Okay. Is it a friend or is it a relative? Is it a friend? No. Relative? Eyes up. Yes. Male? Relative? I'll get this in 2 seconds flat. Is it me? No. Is it Dad? No. Uncle Gordon? Uncle Sandy? Uncle Georgie? No. Any of the cousins? No. No nephews? I've got no children that I'm aware of. And I'm like, Alexander, it can't be anyone else. He's like, yes, it can be somebody else getting all aggressive with me. And then I'd actually think, no, he must have this wrong. And I'd start patronising him. I'd be like, are you sure it's a male relative, Alexander? And then we've been at this for hours. I had to change tack. I'm like, Alexander, do you know this person? Yes. Do I know this person? Eyes up, yes. Okay, do you know where they live? Yes. Okay, is it Scotland? Yes. Glasgow? Yes. Do you know where in Glasgow? Looks at the window. And that's not helping me, Alexander. Do you know how to describe this person? Yes. Okay, let's describe them. What colour hair have they got? Is it blonde? No. Strawberry blonde? No. Ginger? All the same thing. I'm like, Alexander, who is it? 6 hours have passed, and eventually we get it. It's a man in his 40s with black hair, lives in Scotland. He's talking about himself. 6 hours, and then immediately he looked down at his stomach, and I was like, oh my God, what is it? You're nervous? Are you nervous about something? Anxious, nervous, tension, butterflies in your stomach? What is it? What is it? Tell me. He's like, no, he's starving. We've been at this for 6 hours. It was actually Alexander that told me that I looked like Rylan. We were watching the TV one day, he's looking at the TV, he's looking at me, he's looking at the TV, he's looking at me. Eventually I figured out, I'm saying, you're saying that I look like Rylan. Oh, I went, okay. And then he kept looking at the kitchen. I said, what is it about the kitchen? The kitchen, something about the kitchen. It's, I don't know, the kitchen, worktops, the kitchen table. Back door. The back door, is it because Rylan's into the back door stuff, is it? And what he was actually trying to say to me was that I looked like Rylan, and then he was looking at the fridge in the oven. He said, I looked like Rylan, but before he went to Turkey to get his teeth done. But no, and my life has always been a little bit different without realising. Like, I can actually chart my life in terms of Alexander's wheelchairs, the way that people can chart their life in terms of cars that they've owned. You know the way some people are like, oh my God, I used to have this Golf GTI, went from 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, 17-inch alloys, it was an absolute cracker. And I'd be like, 2002 Alexander had this amazing wheelchair with hydraulic brakes and it had gel handlebars, it was superb. Because I don't think people realise how important wheelchairs are to wheelchair users. I mean, that sounds like a perverse statement, right? But people don't. My brother's in a moulded wheelchair that sits him up. He's in it 16 hours a day. It is his lifeline. But people don't realise how important wheelchairs are. That's why there's people left on planes 6 and 7 hours not having their wheelchair back, or it's returned broken. Like, we would have wheelchair technicians come out to our house to fix Alexander's wheelchair if it broke, and that would be catastrophic. And these were people, good people, working with disabled folk, working with wheelchairs, and they'd go like that to us. Right, we just need to take that wheelchair away, but we'll get it back to you in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Where do you think my brother's going to go? But people don't realise as well how expensive they are as well. Tens of thousands of pounds for a wheelchair, and you can't even get finance on them. I mean, disabled people are at the behest of an absolute scam. Like, my brother's got to buy a new wheelchair every time because it's a moulded wheelchair. He can't even get into the second-hand market. We can't even generate income to sell his wheelchairs. That would be a great resale market for us to enter as well, you know, because we could be just like one careful owner. Low mileage. Never been driven on the motorway. But having a disabled brother, it does impact your personality. It really has a big influence on your life, and not always for the better. You know, I'm very angry. I've got a lot of anger in me. I've held it for a long time, long number of years. And if you're from Glasgow, that is the last thing you need. And we don't need any more anger, do we? I mean, we're an angry race of people, aren't we? You know, I'm doing this show at the Edinburgh Fringe, you know, people coming through to see me every day, they're getting off the train, like, fucking Edinburgh's shite, the castle's rubbish. They've not even got a bar up there, it's £7 for a pint, it's fucking terrible. We're an angry, and we're not very laid back, we're a very uptight type of people, aren't we, Glaswegians? We're not very laid back. You'll never find a laid back Glaswegian. I mean, the only time you'll find a laid back Glaswegian is in the co-op. The funeral home, not the shop. Not at those prices. That meal deal is rubbish, you know. But I'm angry. You know, I've got a lot of anger in me, you know, because I'm angry at Alexander's disability. He didn't do anything to deserve it. Alexander, when he was being born, the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck and he was asphyxiated. He went without oxygen for 10 minutes. That's how the brain damage occurs. It wasn't my mum's fault. It wasn't my dad's fault. It wasn't Alexander's fault. It was the hospital's fault. But that's next year's show. And I don't know if you can take solace from the names of hospitals, you know, like York Hill Sick Children's Hospital, the Queen Elizabeth. My brother was born in a hospital called Rotten Row. That name doesn't inspire confidence, does it? Up there, Rotten Row. So I'm angry, and I'm angry about other things as well. I'm angry about the lack of accessibility and inclusion. I've spent my life trying to get Alexander into venues in his wheelchair, and not always successful. See, Alexander's #1 passion in life is he loves music, right? He loves music. He loves in particular a band called Mike Peters and the Alarm. They're a Welsh punk rock group from the 80s, and he's been going to see the gigs for years. And I've actually taken Alexander to see Mike Peters and the Alarm at King Tut's Wawa Hut. Give me a cheer if you've heard of King Tut's Wawa Hut. Okay. For anyone who doesn't know, King Tut's Wawa Hut is a world-class, world-famous music venue. It sits in the city centre of Glasgow. It's where the band Oasis were discovered. They say it was King Tut's greatest ever discovery. And King Tut's sits, right, in the middle of a gradient 3 hill. And to get into King Tut's, it's 3 steps down. And just to make sure you're committed, that you really want to see the band, to get into the concert hall, it's 14 steps, 2 flights of stairs up. Right? No laughing matter when I was trying to take him in there. Now, to get Alexander up to the concert hall, I would actually have to pull his wheelchair up every individual stair. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, why would you just not get a bouncer to help you carry Alexander's wheelchair up the flight of stairs? And I'll ask you this. Have you ever tried to carry a sofa up a flight of stairs? Right, pivot. If you can write a full episode in a sitcom about how difficult it is to get a sofa up a flight of stairs, let me tell you, getting a real live person in a wheelchair is much harder. Because you'll be taking the weight all together, you become unstable, it's really dangerous trying to go up that steep gradient, and it could be really dangerous for all of you, right? But the best thing to do to mitigate the risk, right, is you tilt Alexander's wheelchair back, use the centre of gravity, and you drag the wheelchair up step by step at a time. Now, if you are going to lose your footing at any point, all you do is you pull Alexander's wheelchair back, crush yourself with the weight of his wheelchair, stab yourself in the chest with his handlebars, you will die but he will live. I'd get to the top of the stairs, I'd get into King Tut's, and I'd be thinking, okay, greatest ever discovery, Oasis. I disagree. Its greatest ever discovery would have been a lift. A lift would have been my Oasis. And once I got Alexander into the King Tut's, the gig venue, the fun didn't stop there. I would then have to protect him from cigarettes and alcohol. That is not an Oasis reference, right? So in the days before the smoking ban, people would stand with a lit cigarette, they would hold it down by their side, drink in one hand, cigarette in another, and they'd be watching the gig. But Alexander, of course, in his wheelchair, would be taking these spastications, his arms and legs sort of flailing, particularly when he gets excited, right? So he could get caught with a stray cigarette, which would be catastrophic for Alexander, right? I mean, not only would it be catastrophic for Alexander, it would raise some really difficult questions for us with social services. But Jackie, could you come in here? This disabled man keeps showing up with cigarette burns on his arms. And it's not even like we could pass it off and say that Alexander was self-harming. He can't use his arms. So they'd think it was us that were doing it, and I'd be like, no, that's not the case. No, we took him to a rock concert. They'd be like, I don't believe you. Disabled people just like going to the park. And you'd be like, no, we took him to see Mike Peters and the Alarm at King Tut's Wah Wah Hut. They'd be like, Jackie, could you phone the police? They're definitely lying. Because there's not even a lift in King Tut's. I'm angry about that. I'm also angry about something else. I've got this terrible condition. It's called BBA. Has anyone ever heard of that before? I just made it up, so. It's called Blue Badge Anger. Is everyone aware what a blue badge is? Yeah. It's a disabled parking pass. I mean, I'm saying it like it gets you into Disneyland, right? But it allows you to park in a disabled space, give you better access to certain facilities. And what happens is, when you've got a disabled brother, you start noticing the amount of people that like to park in a disabled space without a blue badge. And judging by the awkward silence, some of those people are in the room. Right? But once you start spotting this, it's all you can see. Right? It's actually ruining my life. I'm out with my girlfriend Marion, we're walking the dog, she's like, please, can you just calm down? And I'm like, no, this is a fucking scandal. I'm raging about this. This is unfair. This is absolutely disgusting behaviour. I'm actually running about Glasgow looking for cars parked in disabled spaces without blue badges. But do you know that a number of these blue badges, a growing number of these blue badges are now being obtained fraudulently? Disabled people are having their windscreen smashed, their blue badges stolen, just so you can get free parking. They've been traded in the black market online. There actually have people been applying for these blue badges with disabilities that they don't have. So not only am I out there running about Glasgow looking for cars parking in disabled spaces without blue badges, I'm now running about Glasgow looking for cars parked in disabled spaces with blue badges. Because there's always one type of car that you're looking for, one type of vehicle. It's a black Range Rover. Now let me explain. I do all my shopping, right, at Lidl every week, because I'm not sure my comedy career is going to turn out. And at the Lidl that I go to, right, there is a big black Range Rover, a Range Rover Defender, and it's parked down the disabled space every week with its blue badge on display, and I think, aha, you are a disgusting human being. Right, exactly. Right, and let me tell you how I know that they're up to something and this is fraudulent, because what you're trying to tell me is that this person can afford a car that costs £100,000, but they can't afford to shop at Waitrose. And the thing is, I'm incensed by this and I'm actively seeking out the injustice. I'm looking for it, you know. Now I've become Batman. But I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this blue badge action all the time. It's really upsetting me. And I was so incensed by this big Range Rover parking with this blue badge. I actually took to Twitter, right, to explain my outrage. You know, people on Twitter are desperate to take offence to anything that you say. Well, I got a really bad backlash over this, and people are like, "Oh, that is absolutely disgusting, James Gardner. What you're saying is really horrible. What you're insinuating is vile. So what you're saying is, and suggesting, is that disabled people can't afford luxury cars." And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because we never had a luxury car when I was growing up. We had a bright red Transit van with a sheet of plywood in the back. That's for Alexander's wheelchair, not because my dad was a joiner or anything like that. When we would go out in this mobility vehicle with Alexander, people would see my dad and go, "Oh, there goes Postman Pat." Right? And the thing is, this blue badge anger, it resides so deeply in me that actually I'm looking at cars all the time now, and I've had to look up the DVLA to see if they changed the criteria for blue badges. Right? So I've got this. Right. Great physical comedy. So. Do you understand it's designed to look like a blue badge? Do you get it? I mean, I'm 40 years old. This is the highlight of my career so far. That's not laminate. That's just 5 bits of sellotape that I've put. 2 degrees. That's my greatest achievement. But I got this from the DVLA website. And you can look this up when you go home. So these are the genuine criteria to get a blue badge. Right? Now, I've left out the most obvious ones. No arms, no legs, blue badge, fine. Ignorance ripping right out some of you, by the way. How will they drive the car? Right, so you can read this on the DVLA. People who may qualify for a blue badge, right? You can qualify for a blue badge if you frequently become extremely anxious or fearful of public or open spaces. Right? I'll read that one again. You can get a blue badge if you frequently become extremely anxious or fearful of public or open spaces. Basically, if you're a wee bit nervous. Right? Nervous of getting a parking ticket. You may qualify for a blue badge if you struggle severely, right, to plan or follow a journey. I'll read that one again. You can get a blue badge if you struggle severely to plan or follow a journey. So, good luck in your car. You can qualify for a blue badge if you regularly have intense and overwhelming responses to situations causing temporary loss of behavioural control. Once more, we'll just do that once more again, right? You can get a blue badge if you regularly have intense and overwhelming responses to situations causing temporary loss of behavioural control. So if you're a mad bastard, basically. and this is my favourite one, right? You may qualify for a blue badge if you are constantly a significant risk to yourself or others, near vehicles, in traffic, or in car parks. I'm going to give you a driver's license, let alone a blue badge. But you see, the thing is, like, I'm a wee bit ignorant to disability. People would say to me previously, "Oh, I'm disabled," because some people love telling you that they're disabled. You know who we're talking about, right? Karen. But some people, when they used to tell me that they were disabled, I would go, "Okay, shows your wheelchair," right? Because when I think of disability, I would just think of Alexander, because that's all I've known, that's all I've grown up with. I mean, the first time that I ever saw someone in a wheelchair get out the wheelchair and then get back in the wheelchair, I was like, "That, mate, you need to go to Lourdes twice." But you're taught not to grass in this society, and but I mean, the first time I saw it, it blew my mind, because I was just like, Jackie, you can get someone on the police now because this is a scammer in our midst. But the thing is, everything that I've just read to you there is actually from the DVLA, and actually covers all the symptoms of autism, a range of neurodiverse disability, blindness, and yet, yous were all laughing. Horrible, horrible people. Because a lot of disabilities you can't see, you're not aware of, but also, the blue badge just isn't for the driver. It could be for your brother, your sister, your mum or your dad. And that's how easy it is to make an ass of it. So when you go to park in a disabled space and you think, there's no wheelchairs about, just do it, then maybe you'll think twice. Another result of having a disabled brother of Alexander's disability is, and I don't know if it's just our family, right, but having a disabled brother means that our family are world champions at martyrdom. Does everyone know what a martyr is? Someone who loves to suffer, right? And it kind of makes it their personality. That's the Gardner family. We are, and Glaswegians, we don't need any more opportunities to be martyrs, because that's in our personality, isn't it? That's why you never find a Glaswegian who wins those sort of £5 million luxury houses, you know, the amazing luxury draw. You'll never find a Glaswegian winning one of them. Down in London, oh no, son, I wouldn't think you go down to London. No, it's they take me hours to tidy that house as well. Cost me a fortune. Cost me a fortune. He took the council taxes through the roof. Now, there's 16 of us in this end terrace house. We'd rather just stay here. We'd rather just stay here. We'd rather suffer it. You know, that's a Glaswegian trait. But I mean, my family, we are world champions at martyrdom. I mean, let me explain how this works. Having a disabled brother has given me an insight to what it's like to be disabled. I'm not disabled, but my brother is. Life is tougher when you're disabled, right? You're used to not getting accessibility. You're used to not getting inclusion. Going to play football's harder. Going to see a gig is harder. Parking your car is harder. So you know what? You're used to life being tougher. You go like that. Just give me it. I'll take it. It's one more thing and I'll wear it like a badge of honour. So like my family, we are huge martyrs because we're used to life being a bit tougher. Like, we've got a blue badge for Alexander. We wouldn't even use it. My dad would much rather that space went to someone who's a wee bit nervous. And it affects my personality hugely. Like, again, it impacts my relationship with my girlfriend Marion, you know. Like, I'm such a martyr. I don't know how to put myself first. So, like, you know, Marion will say to me, do you want that last piece of cake? And I'm like, oh God, no, I don't deserve it. No, not for me. Not for me. No, please, no. And then she'll eat the last piece of cake. And then I'll be like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. My blood sugar's dropped. I would have loved that cake. And she's like, why didn't you ask for it? I'm like, oh no, you can't have your cake and eat it. No. It's my cross to bear. I'll just take it. And again, just in different scenarios, it affects me. Like, I remember going around to see my dad. I used to suffer with crippling sciatica, really bad sciatica. I went around to see my dad. I said, Dad, good news. I've been scheduled for surgery on my back. And my dad, I always remember, he went, what are you wanting surgery for? Ethel, he's wanting surgery. What are you wanting surgery for, son? You don't want to mess about with surgery. That's dangerous. I said, Dad, I've got really bad sciatica. I can't get down the stairs. James, your Uncle Eddie's got sciatica. He can't get down the stairs either. He just slides down in his dinner tray. Don't know how to make life better. Just suffer it. That's the Gardner way. Even in sort of inconsequential scenarios, I remember trying to rent a flat with a friend of mine in my 30s. It was a 2-bedroom flat. One of the bedrooms came with an ensuite bathroom. We both wanted the bedroom with the ensuite bathroom. Chef's kiss. So how will we settle this? We will toss a coin, standing side by side. Heads gets the ensuite bathroom. Toss the coin. I call heads. Lands on heads. I get the ensuite bathroom. I turned to my friend and went, let's do best of 3. It's a true story. Even when I met my girlfriend Marion for the first time, I remember seeing her, I thought, wow, love at first sight. I need to talk to her. I managed to get a conversation with her. It was going great. It was ebbing and flowing. I've never felt a connection like this in my life. And I interrupted her mid-sentence. I'm like, excuse me. I have to say, I've got a friend you'd really like. He's got an ensuite bathroom. But if you think, like, small things in life become a bit more of a challenge, can you imagine what it's like to do big things, like book a holiday? Booking a holiday is a very stressful thing. Particularly, we started going on foreign holidays now, sort of 15, 16, and this was back in the days of teletext. You know, you'd be sitting there waiting for a web page to refresh, basically going, right, phone it now. And this was before the internet, so, like, travel agents could tell lies to you. So my mum would phone and she'd be like, is this resort suitable for wheelchairs? My son's in a wheelchair. But oh yes, Mrs. Gardner, I think I've actually stayed there myself. Yes, very flat. And you turn up, you know, and it would be like going to Glencoe, you know. Hills everywhere. And that's the thing, like, very stressful. You would always have to think about Alexander in the wheelchair. My mum would be on the travel agent saying, look, my son's in a moulded wheelchair. It's really important that he stays in this moulded wheelchair right up till we get on the plane. Is that possible? They would say, Mrs. Gardner, not a problem. That's what you're paying us money for. We will sort it. We'll deal with the airport for you. But if you want to go to the airport in advance, then just triple confirm it. Then that would be great. So we'd go to the airport 5 and 6 times before we went on holiday. The neighbours used to think we were millionaires. You know, it's like in Glasgow. Jim, they're away at the airport again. That's 5, 6 times. They must have a private jet because he came back at 4 o'clock. We'd get out to the airport, a really stressful place at the best of times. You know, you to get there 3.5 hours for international travel, 3.5 hours before your flight departed. We'd get there 8 hours before the flight departed because we're in the wheelchair. We'd get there 8 hours early, and there would still be a queue of people from Glasgow ahead of you for the same flight. Glaswegians no one to miss out on anything, you know, be over the tannoy, call for special assistance. Any passengers travelling needing special assistance, please make your way to the front. You would just get, right, quick, Chantel, put a limp on, hurry up, John, just fucking join the queue. Doesn't matter what the queue is for, Glaswegians want to get there in front of you, so we'd get to the airport, it'd be highly stressful. We actually have to turn up to the airport every single year with a letter from the doctor to say that Alexander was disabled. Every year, a new letter. I'd be like, surely we can save you some paper this year, come on. I mean, it's incredulous, and it's a highly stressful situation. My dad stressed it to the eyeballs. He's my hero. I'm trying to emulate him. I think that being stressed is a good thing. You know, we'd get to the airport, we'd liaise with him. Like, Alexander needs to stay in his moulded wheelchair right up to the last minute, right till we got on the plane. Yes, no problem at all. We'd get to the check-in desk. We'd just be about checked in. Just as we're about to push Alexander away, one of the check-in staff would say, "Oh, we just need to check your son's wheelchair into the hold." Right, my dad would be like, "I can fucking smell burnt toast, why is my arm sore?" I'd be trying to impress my dad, so I'd have a really incredulous response. I'd be like, "Check my brother's wheelchair into the hold. Where do you think my brother's going to go? In the hand luggage?" But my mum, really calm, really stoic woman, her son is going on holiday no matter what. She would stay nice and cool, really passive aggressive, and she would be like, "Well, I'm sorry to tell you, if you're going to have to check my son's wheelchair into the hold, then you're just going to have to check my son into the hold with it." And then they start printing out labels and try and put them on Alexander, but please stop stop what you're doing. We'd go up the stairs, you know, up towards the departure gate, and it wouldn't stop then. The challenges would just keep coming. You would always there'd be a guy come over with a high-vis jacket and the walkie-talkie, and I would see him in the distance come towards us, and you'd be like, "Please don't do it." And he'd be pushing something about, "Please, I hope that's not for me. Please don't come." I'd be thinking about my dad. Like, he's my only dad. I love him. Please don't come over here. And he would do it. The guy would come over with a wheelchair, a hospital wheelchair, and he'd be like that, because you could smoke in the airport then. And he'd be like, "Right, you just need to get your brother for that wheelchair into this wheelchair." My dad would be down like a sack of potatoes. He'd be a man down, and I'd be like, "My brother will die if you take him out of this wheelchair and put him in that one. What the fuck are you doing?" It would just be major stress. We'd get over that, we'd get down the jetway to board the plane, finally to board the plane from the middle of the plane. We'd get the wheelchair right down. And a wee detail I've left out is my mum was born in India. Right? She came over here when she was 12. My mum's mixed race, my mum's brown, right? But my dad's Scottish, so I'm actually a quarter Indian. And what that means is I'm Indian enough that I'm able to eat really hot curries. But I'm not Indian enough that I can do the voice and get away with it. No, sorry. And the thing is, like, I'm really proud of my Indian heritage, and my mum is brown, and we actually get lighter as we get younger. So when my dad would take pictures of us on holiday, it'd be like my mum, my brother, me and my wee sister, we would look like a Dulux colour chart. People would look at my sister and think, did she not go on holiday with them, you know? She was chalk white. But anyway, we get to the door of the plane, and then my dad would have to scoop Alexander out the moulded wheelchair and lift him up high, right? And try and get down that wee narrow sort of aisle like that, like lifting Alexander over the seats. Alexander loved it. He thought he was crowd surfing. Right? But my sweat's lashing off my dad. It's really hard. He's got Alexander. He's carrying him down this wee narrow aisle, this sort of hallway thing. And I'm saying, "Dad, there's a much easier way to do it, right? Just get a duvet and pull him." And we'd get Alexander right down to the front of the plane. We'd be in the front 3 seats. My dad would lower Alexander into the middle seat. But Alexander can't sit himself up, right? He's not got much space. His legs all sort of twisted, you know. Like Alexander's got quite an unusual shape, you know. He's shaped a wee bit like a boomerang almost, you know. Like when we take Alexander round the corner in his wheelchair, he can see himself coming, right? So Alexander's been lowered into this middle seat. Right, his legs all twisted to the side. My sister's on one side holding Alexander up. I'm on the other seat holding Alexander up from that side. I mean, this is never going to work, but my mum's adamant that Alexander's going on holiday. We're going to Spain. So my mum, she's been fashioning this homemade harness for Alexander for days, right? What she's going to do, sitting from the 2 seats behind, she's going to loop over Alexander, right, loop over Alexander's seat from behind, and she's going to pull it round, and she's got all these Velcro straps and stuff like that to kind of pull Alexander in and kind of almost hold himself like a makeshift wheelchair. So she's been sewing this, making this, she's packed in her hand luggage. She's gone to the wee bathroom in the plane. She's gone to the wee plane bathroom to get this out of hand luggage, right? She's figured out that the easiest way to get this done is to put it on herself so she knows where everything goes. So you're boarding the plane from the middle of the plane, you're coming up the aisle, you can just see the rows of the tops of seats, right? And then my mum, in 2002, a brown woman, busts out the bathroom, unzips her hoodie to reveal what can only be described as a makeshift suicide bomber's vest, and starts pulling off bits of Velcro. She's talking to Alexander, who you can't see. She's like, don't worry, it'll all be over soon. All these are true stories. These are too ridiculous to make up. Every year this would happen, and every year we would look lovingly and jealously at the emergency exit row seats. You know those seats where you get extra legroom? Kind of strange concept that, because you've got to pay airlines more money to sit there, haven't you? And then when you turn up, you've got to put in a shift for the airline, doing a bit of training on the job. Like you should actually be getting a discount, not paying more for that. And we would always think, can we not sit Alexander there, more space, more comfortable for his legs? And we really plead with the cabin crew, could we not sit my brother there? Could we not sit Alexander, much more comfortable for him? They'd come over and they'd be like, is he able to operate the doors in case of an emergency? I'd be like, what is wrong with you? Do you want to see this letter? What the fuck? And honestly, we were so incensed by it, we would actually ask to speak to the pilot. One year we demanded to speak to the pilot. The pilot came down and said, look, can we not sit my brother in these emergency exit row seats? The pilot said, I'm really sorry, we can't. Your brother can't operate the doors in case of an emergency. And I'm like, can we not just say that he can and sit him there? And the pilot was like, no, that would be fraudulent. I'm like, listen mate, I see your Range Rover parked at Lidl's every Sunday. But the great thing, the wonderful thing is that this year, Alexander has just celebrated his 47th birthday, 47 years old. It really is amazing, because Alexander gets to live a much more independent life nowadays. He still needs 24-hour care. He's in his own flat 5-6 days a week now, which is brilliant. We still see him almost every day. But my mum and dad, who are in their 70s, they get a bit of respite, which is fantastic. And Alexander's living a much more independent life. He's got like his own Facebook account now, which is amazing. Like his carers have set that up for him. I see him checking into places. I actually get to bump into my brother randomly in the street, which is amazing. I've never had the pleasure of that before, because I would always have to know where he was. He would either be with my mum, my dad, my sister or me, because obviously his care was reliant upon us. So it's amazing I get to bump into him in the street with his carer, which is amazing, because now I get to go that, how is he alright? I get messages, I get text messages from Alexander, which is amazing. I get iMessages from him. I mean, I've been getting iMessages from him his whole life. But it's great, because I get messages from him, you know, like, hey bro, are you coming to my flat to see me today? Oh yeah, something like that. Text him back, yes, big bro, I will be there in half an hour, can't wait. He'll reply back saying, good luck, I won't be there. And now he just sends me a wee emoji for 2 fingers up. I actually got a message from Alexander on Facebook one night. It was about 3 in the morning. I thought he's maybe just been up taking spasms with his carers. And the message was really sweet. The message said, hey bro, how are you? Miss you, can't wait to see you. Which was amazing. I've waited 40 years to have a message like that from my brother. So I was on holiday at the time. I thought, oh, this is amazing. I was buzzing for days. And FaceTime my mum and dad towards the end of the holiday. Mum's at home, everyone. And my mum said, oh, we're all missing you. Everyone's missing you back here. Everyone except your brother. I went, I don't think so, Ethel. Let me just show you this message that Alexander sent me. It said, hey bro, love you, miss you, can't wait to see you. And Mum just looked at me, she went, no, that was me. Forget blue badge fraud. My mum logs onto my disabled brother's Facebook account to send me messages because he says it's the only way that I'll reply. But no, as I mentioned earlier, Alexander, he absolutely loves music. It's his #1 passion in life. And I've been playing Alexander's records for him since I was probably about 5 years old. And actually later led to me becoming a professional DJ, because we always playing music, we always did lights, we'd always kid on it, we were DJs. As I've said to Alexander's favourite band is a band called Mike Peters and the Alarm. They've opened for the Stones, they've opened for U2. They're still gigging to this day. They sing about fighting the power and fighting the system. Alexander's been going to the gigs for almost 40 years. I've been going with him for almost 30 years, and I've come to realise that not only are they Alexander's favourite band, they're now my favourite band too. And Alexander has always wanted to go to this super fan event that the Alarm have every year. It's called The Gathering, and it takes place in Rhyl in the north of Wales, where the band are from. But getting to Wales from Glasgow is really difficult for Alexander in the wheelchair. In fact, disabled travel in general is really difficult. It can be life or death. To put this into context, there's a man called David Tayers, 45 years old. He's got cerebral palsy, from Glasgow, big Celtic supporter. I don't know why I said that, I just love bigotry. But David was trying to get from Stirling to Sauchie, which is an 8-mile journey, right? There's an M&M joke in there somewhere. But it's an 8-mile journey from Stirling to Sauchie. And there was overhead signal failure and his connecting train was cancelled. And David was left in his wheelchair outside Stirling train station for 6 hours. 6 fucking hours, right? And the wind, the rain, the cold. And ScotRail said we did everything we could to get the customer home, because he was waiting on a taxi that could accommodate a wheelchair. And they didn't do everything they did to get the customer home, because if they did, they'd have been down there with blankets, tea, coffee, waiting with them. They would have found a bright red transit van, right? And the only reason I know about this is I read it in the newspaper, but disabled people face that kind of struggle every day. So for us to take that chance with Alexander, it would be too much. It literally would be life or death. He's far too vulnerable. We couldn't take that risk. My parents in their 70s, wasn't possible for them to take Alexander down, so I said, you know what, I'm going to take him. I'll drive him down, because I've always wanted to be Postman Pat. So I drove Alexander down in his mobility vehicle with his carer Val. Val used to be my babysitter. She's also a lifelong Alarm fan, so there was a great sort of poetry about it all. So we drove down to Wales to Llandudno Conference Centre. We got there and there was an accessible viewing platform. We got to the accessible viewing platform and it was full. The first thing I said was, oh, for fuck's sake, I can smell burnt toast. And in this situation, you know, I was like, I'm going to get Alexander to see this gig no matter what. I'm trying to take him up the ramp. And there are able-bodied people standing all the way up the ramp, just using it as a vantage point to drink their pints to get a better view of the stage. So I'm angry. I'm really angry on Alexander's behalf. And like I've said to you, I don't need any more anger, not if you're from Glasgow. We're going up this ramp. It's full. We go onto the platform, it's absolutely full, and I'm trying to wedge Alexander's wheelchair and get a bit of space, and I'm starting to look at people. I'm looking at people with canes and walking sticks and sitting there, and I'm thinking, you're not as disabled as my brother. You're not as deserving as my brother. Things that you shouldn't think, but things that you do. I managed to wedge Alexander into this little gap. I've asked a guy in a mobility scooter to move his mobility scooter a bit, which he does. I've got Alexander into this little gap. I've tilted the wheelchair back so he can see the stage. Alexander's big musket leg is fucking like that. It's ready to go off, right? His foot is about that much away from the guy sitting next to him's face. The atmosphere is toxic because people are now looking at me and getting angry because I'm blocking their view. They've been there in plenty of time, but I'm looking at them thinking you're not as disabled, as deserving as my brother, so I'm angry at them. It's a horrible atmosphere. Everything's on a knife edge. All it's going to take is one moment of excitement. Alexander's legs are going to flail. He's going to kick this guy in the face and there will be a riot on the accessible viewing platform. And then what would I do? Because you can never hit a disabled person first. And what actually just to let you know that didn't happen. But what actually happened, because it is a true story, right? It's a true story. What happened was I stepped off the platform, it was not about that height, and I managed to hold Alexander's hand through the gap in the barrier. And we had a great night and some amazing memories. And when we were driving home the next day, I realised that I was the arsehole. I realised that I was the person in the wrong. Because that's what happens when you're confronted with scarcity. When you don't have enough of something, whether it's a disabled space, whether it's a blue badge, you start turning on one another. And I realised that the platform was actually just needed to be twice as big and everything would have been okay. Because there's a framework with which you can understand disability. It's called the social model of disability. And what it states is that you're only as disabled as the society that you live in. Right? What they mean by that is, if everything is accessible, not just architecture, but if you make everywhere accessible, if there are lifts everywhere, widened doorways, if there are ramps, if there's alt text, if there's British Sign Language interpreters, if there's cam spaces, if you do all that, and make things accessible to people and preach inclusion and practice inclusion, you will always have a medical condition, but you won't always be disabled. And if we could work to that model, I think the world would be a much better place. Yeah. You can clap at that bit. So we've got time to finish. Just probably two of my favourite stories about Alexander. So the first one I want to tell you is, think about this. When I was about 11 years old, or if there's anyone from the social services, and when I was 18, I was old enough to look after Alexander just for a couple of hours to give my parents a bit of respite, okay? Now, again, in the ordinary world, people might think, well, that's not really suitable, leaving, your 11-year-old to look after your disabled brother, but that's just what you do, right? Give my parents a bit of respite. And my mum and dad were out one day with my sister, and Alexander's trying to tell me something, right? And I was trying to ignore him, to be honest, right? And he's keeping on, he's relentless, he's keeping on, looking at his eyes, he's trying to tell me something. He's telling me he can see something from his moulded wheelchair, he can see something through the living room window, across the street, through the gaps in the neighbour's fence. You can see two people at the back door of my neighbour's house, and they're ready to tan the house. Now, for anyone that is not from Glasgow, that doesn't mean they're there with a giant mitt ready to apply tanning mousse to the rough cast. I mean, ladies, it was a Friday night, but they were about to rob the house. That's what we mean by that. So on Alexander's instruction, I run across the road, I rattle the letterbox, ring the bell, make a racket, and the burglars flew off into the evening. One of the neighbours phoned the police turn up at the door, right, show them inside. Always remember this one officer in particular. Looks at Alexander in the wheelchair, looks at me, starts looking about. Where's the appropriate adult? Who's in charge? Who's looking after you here? Quick as a flash, not to get mum and dad into trouble, I looked at Alexander and went, my brother's 18, he's looking after me. We used to get him to buy bevy for us and everything, by the way. Said, right, who saw the burglary? It's a true story again. Who saw the burglary? I went, he did. And both officers turned and went, oh, for fuck's sake. I went, oh, wait a minute. I said, that's unfair. My brother is a normal person. He's got an abnormal condition. My brother can understand everything. My brother can communicate. He looks up for yes. He looks down for no. He looks his heart for emotion. He looks his wrist for time. Alexander pipes up, starts looking down at his hands, starts looking at the police officer. Police officer, like, is he trying to tell me something? So don't worry about that, mate, just forget about it. About half an hour later, I show these officers to the door. One of them turns to me, the kind of smart-ass officer, went, bit of a wasted exercise that wasn't. I thought you said your brother could understand everything. I thought you said your brother can communicate. I thought you said he'd be able to tell us what happened. I said, oh, aye, he can. He's not a grass. My favourite story about Alexander, like I said to you, I became a professional DJ due to Alexander. I used to DJ all over Glasgow, all over the UK. I would DJ these headphone discos, I would do student unions, we would do end-of-term balls, we would do music festivals. I even used to go to America and DJ around US colleges and festivals there doing these headphone discos. And the agency that used to book me on the understanding that I had all my own paperwork. They said, we'll book you for these shows as long as you've got your own artists or entertainers visa to get into America. Do you have all that paperwork? And I would go like that, yes. And I didn't. What I would do is I would just kid on that I was going on holiday and illegally DJ round America. Right, but I knew that the chance of me getting caught was increasing each time I went, and lo and behold, I landed in Philadelphia airport one fateful morning, and I was pulled in for a random search and questioning by the Department of Homeland Security. Just me and a load of Arab men. It's very random, apparently. And I was like that, guys, you've got the wrong person, I'm Indian. And I always remember in this sort of detention room, there's a stainless steel desk, there's a cop with a gun and a computer, and I always remember her name was Officer Ortega, and I should stop saying that because she's going to see this at some point. And I always remember, she said, right, what do you do in the UK? And I said, I'm a DJ. She's typing on the computer. She went, are you here to DJ in America? I was like, no. You need a visa for that. I'm just here on holiday. You've been to America an awful lot of times on holiday recently. I went, I know, I just love the country. USA, USA. She went, right, have you ever been to America before to DJ? I went, absolutely not, absolutely not. She went, look, I'm going to tell you something. Lying to me is as serious as lying to the President of the United States of America. And all I could think of at that point was Donald Trump as a bouncer. Where have you been tonight, guys? Just a couple of beers. Those are your words, not my words. I don't believe you. That's fake news. China. She went, look, I'm going to give you one last chance. Have you ever been to America to DJ before? I said, I promise you I have not. And I'll never forget, she turns the computer screen around and there's a video of me on YouTube DJing outside the University of Denver. With a big graphic that came up that says, James Gardner, DJ. And she said, are you sure that's not you? Looked at the computer screen. I thought of something that Alexander once said to me and I went, no, that's Rylan. Ladies and gents, that was Born in a Wheelchair.
Memories come flooding back, the bitter pain of disappointment, of once of having love, but now I only feel lost. I'm living on a knife edge, at the end of the line, taking all the hearts ill. I'm looking for a lifeline. Hey, love. Oh, oh, oh. When you ain't got no one in this world, it makes you feel